we have in the Gospel the shorter form of the Lord's Prayer. It is not impossible that this teaching was given in a simplified form in a private discourse with those who are asking for advice on prayer, and then in a more public and solemn form, which would explain how one form, that of Matthew, is more liturgical than this more intimate one of Luke. What is interesting is that the more solemn way of proclaiming things in Matthew is very succinct in its intimacy here and simplicity of Luke. And the parallelism which characterizes the Semitic way of expressing itself is not essentially found in this form, except in one exception, and it is precisely the one that we need to look at. Whereas it's very simple in all these expressions that precede and then follow, we have in one bit here the fullness of the parallelism and the insistence, therefore, that this is a key point. I'm talking about this element of forgiveness, which is therefore made conditional. For we ourselves forgive each one who is in debt to us. It's there, and it's also there, taking more space than any other line in this prayer. And it is a reminder until the end of time that the notion of forgiveness is something to be understood in its context of absence of right. We have no right to claim anything, least of all forgiveness, and if we, on our part, do not yield to the conditions, then we cannot hope to obtain it. And this applies to us in this land perhaps more than to any other, where unfortunately it's still there, this element of people, even in church, not being on speaking terms with such and such in the same church. And they will perhaps tell you quite calmly and casually, "Oh, I don't speak to and it finishes there, and there's no question of having that altered. People do not realize that this is precisely the issue that the Lord is attacking. We need therefore to be careful when we come into the realm of the divine. We can't use God as a puppet or go to confession and bully him around. He has the last word. We notice also that it begins in God and his rights. Father, may your name be held holy. And this is the object of any worship and cult and indeed Christian life, hallowing the name of God, giving him back his rights. And on the level of the planet, this is a matter of some concern. It is only in the last generation or two that these rights on the level of the planet have been massively withdrawn. The consequences cannot but be, unfortunately, equally imbalanced. If we are handling our little toy, as it were a game, without reference to the instructions for use, then we must bear the consequences. God is God, and we are only stewards. Already in 1634, there was this warning given to mankind in an apparition of our Blessed Lady, which is of good standing. It happened in Quito, in Ecuador, and it's referred to as Our Lady of Good Success. The year is 1634. Ecuador then, 1634. In this apparition, already Our Lady warned of precisely what the third secret of Fatima would seem to be predicting. We're not quite sure of its content, but it would seem that something huge is going to go on in the near future. Just listen to what this early succession of events talks about. Our Lady told Venerable Mother Mariana de Jesus Torres that in the late 19th century and throughout most of the 20th century, the Church would yield to a great heresy. The sacrament of matrimony will be attacked and profaned, and Masonry, which will then be in power, will enact iniquitous laws with the objective of doing away with this sacrament, making it easy for everyone to live in sin, encouraging the procreation of illegitimate children born without the blessing of the Church. Then, Our Lady warned, the Christian spirit will rapidly decay, extinguishing the precious light of faith until it reaches the point that there will be an almost total and general corruption of, now it says here, customs or morals. And this will result in the lack of priestly and religious vocations. And then it goes on in this vein. Innocence will almost no longer be found in children, nor modesty in women. And the secular clergy will leave much to be desired, because priests will become careless in their sacred duties. Lacking a prelate and father to guide them with paternal love, gentleness, strength, wisdom and prudence, many priests will lose their spirit, placing their souls in great danger. We can make a jump to Cardinal Ratzinger as he then was. He was the one who backed the approval of the series of Marian apparitions in Akita, and therefore he was well informed when he had this to say. With regard to Bishop Ito, who was from Akita, and Cardinal Ratzinger, both of them declared the messages and events in Akita to be of supernatural origin and labelled them worthy of belief. With these startling affirmations of Cardinal Ratzinger in mind, we can consider what Our Lady of Akita said to Sister Agnes Katsuko Sasakawa on October the 13th, which is a significant date, 1973. It's the anniversary of the great miracle of Fatima. So here's a quotation word for word. As I told you, if men do not repent and better themselves, the Father will inflict a terrible punishment on all humanity. It will be a punishment greater than the deluge, such as one will never have seen before. Fire will fall from the sky and will wipe out a great part of humanity, the good as well as the bad, sparing neither priests nor faithful. The survivors will find themselves so desolate that they will envy the dead. And this bit we can take with us in this month of the Rosary. The only alms which will remain for you will be the Rosary and the sign left by my Son. Each day recite the prayers of the Rosary. With the Rosary, pray for the Pope, the bishops and priests. Then it goes on, the work of the devil will infiltrate even into the Church in such a way that one will see cardinals opposing cardinals, bishops against bishops. The priests who venerate me will be scorned and opposed by their confreres, churches and altars sacked. The Church will be full of those who accept compromises, and the demon will press many priests and consecrated souls to leave the service of the Lord. Now, the article is written in the context of what Ratzinger is recorded to have said when he was Cardinal Ratzinger, with regard to a moment when he was pressed with regard to the third secret of Fatima, and he did reply that there was nothing there which was not in the recognized apparitions of Our Lady, and he knew therefore the content of these. This is to be borne in mind as we draw near to the 13th of October, when it was something of a hint from heaven, when the sun, which is nuclear force, fission, its huge energy coming out of an atomic reaction all the time, drew dangerously close to the earth, and people thought it was the end of the world. That was the feeling they had. That this may also be what is ahead, we do not know. But the fact that this 13th keeps coming back is something which we need to be aware of. We do not know what is ahead, but the 13th was the date when the Jewish people was spared. It goes back to the story of Esther and the Feast of Purim, 13th of Adar, I believe, and this element then comes back on the 13th of May already, and then 13th of October. We, in our time, are witnessing, even politically, something which could be quite a re-establishment of order on a world level if we're not careful. There are political alliances and forces at work before our eyes and out of sight, which could tip the balance actually in a very short time. We do not see things here in the far west, as it were, of civilization in Ireland, but there are things going on underneath which are extremely dangerous. All we can do is obey heaven for our part. We can take into our hands these instruments that Our Lady has given us and pray them well, because if we are distracted and wanting to get to the end, then we too are part of the problem. If on the other hand we take as seriously as she is the plight of humanity, we can do our little bit to re-establish the cosmic balance. Be still, my son, your God will undertake to guide the future as he has the past. Your help, your confidence, let nothing shake. All now mysterious shall be clear at last. Be still, my soul, the tempest still obey. His voice ruled them once on Galilee. Be still, my soul, the hour is hastening on, when we shall be forever with the Lord. When disappointment, grief, and fear are gone, sorrow forgotten, life's pure joy restored. Be still, my soul, when change and tears are past, all safe and blessed.